Snipes and Insights. It's your host, Keith Kavanaugh, alongside Tyler Madarasz. We are back for game one of the Stanley Cup Final. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing great because we have a Stanley Cup Final game tonight. So it's been a long wait, Keith. A lot of sleeps before we get hockey, but we finally get it tonight.
And not just the Stanley Cup Final, but we got a rematch from last year's Stanley Cup Final, in which the Florida Panthers won in 7 games. We'll talk a little bit about last year's playoff. But first, how did we get here? Both the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers took care of business in their respective conference final pretty handedly, both winning in 5 games.
Yeah, conference finals sometimes I feel like over the last decade seem to disappoint, and then we always kind of forget that. I think we all had pretty high expectations for Stars and Oilers, and then all of a sudden you blink and it's over in 5, and it's the same thing in the East with Panthers and Hurricanes, where really since game 1, Keith, the Hurricanes didn't even stand a chance, didn't even look like they were in that series. So the Canes have a lot of question marks to answer in the offseason. So do the Dallas Stars, and we'll see if Pete DeBoer is even there next year to answer those. That's another big question mark. But the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers run thus far has been spectacular, and just dominant wins, respectively, in their conference finals were so impressive.
And to think both of these teams, you almost could say that they were almost out of it at a different point in the playoffs, with the Oilers going down 2-0 to Los Angeles in the first round, almost down 3-0. I know Quentin Byfield would like to chip that puck out a little bit differently, but that could have been a big thing that changed that series. And then Toronto was also up a couple against the Florida Panthers, and they were also up, I think, in game 3, up a couple goals, and we all know how that ended as well. So both these teams seem to be against it a little bit, face some adversity, but then they still found a way to make it back where they were right again last year.
Yeah, we all almost wrote off the Oilers after that game 2 loss against LA, didn't we? And then all of a sudden, as you say, Byfield has that chance to chip the puck out in game 3, and then you blink, and it's a 2-1 series lead. It's 2-2, and then all of a sudden the Oilers are past them in 6. And just like that, they have life. And then the goaltending injury and the change at first, which kind of created chaos at Edmonton, but all of a sudden Stuart Skinner starts winning games and the Oilers go on a run. So they could have been out in the first round, but the Kings kind of falter there. And then the Maple Leafs up 2-0. Like that LA series could have been up maybe 3-0. That game 3 was close between the Maple Leafs and Panthers. The Panthers pull it off when Brad Marchand wins it in overtime. So you need big players to come up in big moments. Marchand's done that for the Panthers. A lot of players have done that for the Oilers, and both teams get to the Cup Finals with depth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to let's just dive right into game 1 tonight, 8 p.m. Oops, producer Seth, a little bit of an uh-oh, but we're all good. Let's get to the lines and the lineup combinations, brought to you by our friends at CoolBet. Stay cool, bet responsibly. Go to puckpedia.com/coolbet to get in on the action. Want to take a look at the odds tonight? The Edmonton Oilers are favored on the money line in game 1, -132, with the Florida Panthers a +112 underdog. The over-under is set at 6. If we want to look at the lineups, you go to puckpedia.com on the lineup tabs to get your latest up-to-date lineup information. For the Florida Panthers, it's pretty status quo. The only slight shift is AJ Greer is still out with an injury, so Jesper Boquist comes into the lineup on that fourth line. D pairs remain the same, and Sergei Bobrovsky is in net for the Panthers for game 1. On the flip side, for the Edmonton Oilers, the only question for them is Connor Brown. He's a game-time decision. It says he said he feels ready to go. We'll see if he's going to take warm-ups. Coach Chris Knobloch said if it's not Connor Brown, it'll probably be Jeff Skinner in that lineup position, but the rest of the Oilers remain as is. If we look at the D pairings, we got Ekholm right there. He's been a staple in the last few games for them. Good to have him back. No surprises on defense. And then in goal, it's going to be Stuart Skinner manning the net for game 1. We'll see how short of a leash he has in this series. But what are your thoughts here? Any surprises, Tyler, or you kind of expected this?
Yeah, I've expected this. Obviously, Connor Brown being a question mark. A lot of Oilers fans wondering if he's going to play. But when game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final hits for the second year in a row, you got to think the adrenaline takes over. Brown was injured. We remember the big hit he took from Alex Petrovic. Then he got sick, so a bit of a double whammy for Connor Brown. But I think the adrenaline will be too much for Brown not to play. So your guy Jeff Skinner might have to be on the sidelines for at least game 1. We'll see if he can maybe sneak in the Cup Final. And then on the other side, this is why you have depth, and this is why Bill Zito acquired players like a Jesper Boquist, who's been great ever since he came into the lineup, played great, scored a goal. He was out of the lineup. He comes back in at some point in the playoffs. I thought he fit in quite well. He was on the top line a little, so that's why you can insert a guy like Boquist on your fourth line, and hopefully they can get buzzing going. But no, this is pretty much status quo. These are the two best teams in the National Hockey League ready to go head-to-head. And the name you mentioned, not Jeff Skinner, it's Stuart Skinner. This is going to be the X factor of the series because their forward depth, it's pretty even. We know the two best players in the world are on the Oilers side. The D pairings are pretty similar. Like Ekholm being back is great. Ekblad and Forsling and Jones are unbelievable on the Florida side. But Bobrovsky over Skinner, he obviously has the edge on the Florida side of things. But can Stuart Skinner continue this miraculous run he's been on? We know the Oilers are going to win Game 4 on the back of Skinner, Keith. But can he get a win here in Game 1, Game 2? Can Stuart Skinner win a Stanley Cup for the Oilers? That's the big question throughout this hopeful 7-game series.
Speaking of Stuart Skinner, let me hit you with a couple factoids, Mr. Tyler. So overall save percentage since May 12th, 944 save percentage, best in the NHL. His slot save percentage, so basically the high quality chances, 884 save percentage, best in the NHL. His rush chance save percentage, 958, best in the NHL, saving about a plus 4.75 goals saved above expected. Not best in the NHL, but second best in the NHL. So he's a guy who, since May 12th, since he got the call back into the lineup, he's really turned it up a notch, and he's made plays when they needed to. That's the thing with Stuart Skinner. He's been so streaky. He'll go on these hot and cold runs. You look at last year, too, right? They made the change when they had Jay Woodcroft start the season there. And then about November, December, they flipped it to Knoblauch. A lot of that was due to the goaltending that the Oilers were not getting. Their underlying stats were well, but they were ranked like 28th in the league in the standings at that point, and they had to make a change. But at the same time, Stuart Skinner's goaltending just flipped the switch as well. And then you saw how the Oilers went on a crazy run, obviously got in a playoff position, made it to the Cup Final last year all the way to Game 7. And then this year, kind of a similar story where it's been like he had a decent regular season, nothing crazy, but then you go to the playoffs, he had a couple bad games, gets taken out. Can't trust him. Calvin Picker gets a run, and then Picker goes down. So then Stuart Skinner's back in the lineup, and now it's his net for the foreseeable future. But to my point earlier, we don't know what kind of leash he's going to be on. If the Oilers lose tonight, let's say 4-1, 5-1, is Calvin Pickard starting Game 2? Are the Oilers going to be really quick? Are they going to even care if it's Skinner's fault? Let's say they win 6-5 tonight, but he lets in 3 goals. Like, is he definitely getting the net for Game 2? Like, all these questions I'm not really sure about.
Yeah, and this is why he is the X factor of this entire Stanley Cup final. All the numbers you mentioned are unbelievable, but we remember when he's not this hot and not this good, the numbers are just the complete opposite. They're not first in the league and across all those categories. They're almost dead last in a lot of those categories. So the slot shots, that's impressive. You could tell that he's locked in, I think, just by that number. But it's the Stanley Cup final. The hockey changes a little and the pressure amps up. Like, I couldn't even imagine the pressure Stuart Skinner is under right now. He's probably feeling it from the media, feeling it from himself, feeling it from the Oilers fans. So Stuart Skinner is the biggest piece of the puzzle for the Oilers. If he doesn't play it well in Game 1, I think Knoblauch would probably give him another shot in Game 2, but that would probably be it. So you just hope if you're an Oilers fan, Skinner can lock in, not allow 5+ goals, because that would be a disastrous start to this Cup final like they had last year where they lost the first 3 games. But man, Stuart Skinner, he is the key to the Oilers if they want to win a Stanley Cup.
Let's go back to that point. So last season, right, these teams faced each other in the Stanley Cup final. Florida takes the first 3 games. Then Edmonton 1-1 takes Game 4, 5, and 6. And then Game 7 is a super close game, 1-goal game, 2-1 win for Florida. Just a great back and forth series. You thought they were dead. Edmonton, they claw back. They get everyone invested. I think Game 7 had the highest ratings in the States in a long, long time. So I think that was an indictment of how the Oilers were able to climb back. They obviously want to take what they learned last year and not put themselves in that position this year. But also, if we want to look at the turnover on both of these teams, so a lot of the core pieces remain the same, right? Both teams' captains, star players, Reinhart, Draisaitl, Barkov, McDavid, all those guys are in place. Bobrovsky and net. Mikkola, Ekblad, Forsling, like the guys on defense, Bouchard. But if you want to look at who the Oilers added, Jake Wallman, John Klingberg, Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, Trent Frederick, Podkolzin, and Calvin Pickard. So there's a lot of ads there, and they also lost Philip Broberg, Dylan Holloway to those dual offer sheets from St. Louis. Ryan McLeod signed with the Buffalo Sabres. Carrick went to the Rangers. You got Fogle, who went to the LA Kings. Cody Ceci went to the Dallas Stars. And then Zach Hyman's obviously out with the injury. So a significant amount of turnover for a team that was able to return, even though it wasn't the star pieces, but a lot of the depth pieces kind of interchange. Same story really on the Florida Panthers side too, right? When you had Seth Jones, Brad Marchand coming into the fold, but then their fourth line guys like Nosek, Boquist, Greer, Nate Schmidt on that third pairing, Vanacek as the backup. And you take out OEL, right? He went to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Brandon Montour signed a huge ticket with the Seattle Kraken. Tarasenko left. Pozo retired. Cousins went to Ottawa. Stolarz, the backup goalie, went to Toronto. So both these teams had a crazy amount of turnover, and they're right back where they left off.
Even Evander Kane, who didn't get to play in that Cup final during that run last year. Like, imagine if Evander Kane could have played for the Oilers last year. Maybe they're not down 3-0. I know it's just one player, but Evander Kane can make a big difference in the series. But this is what we see from a lot of championship teams, especially ones that go back-to-back. That's why if the Florida Panthers go back-to-back, that core is pretty similar, but acquiring Marchand is going to get Bill Zito the GM of the year this year, along with Seth Jones, because that was probably the biggest acquisition of this entire season by any general manager. So you need those pieces to come in when pieces go out. Like when a team wins a cup, it's not going to stay the same. That team is never going to be the same. You're never going to have the same 12-6-2 that you did during that cup run. And that's why it's such an important part for these GMs to build and have their eyes on players that can come in and make a difference. So Florida's done that with Bill Zito. And on the other side, Stan Bowman, he inherited an interesting situation, right? You have a lot of good pieces. You virtually have the two best players on the planet, but he still had to do some things like Jake Wallman. Great acquisition. I think we could all agree. We love Jake Wallman, and we all think he should have stayed in maybe a couple previous stops, including San Jose and Detroit, but he ends up in Edmonton. John Klingberg was a weird one. I think even Oilers fans are like, why are we bringing John Klingberg in? Like, his hips don't even work anymore. He's got to pivot forwards to backwards, but John Klingberg's actually been a fairly steadying presence back there, kind of like the days where he was in Dallas and playing the best hockey of his career. So I like the moves on both sides from Bowman and Zito, and the depth is going to be key during this Stanley Cup final. It's not just going to be the big boys on either side, like the Barkovs and the Reinhardts or the McDavids and the Draisaitls. It's going to be these pieces that Bowman has brought in on one side, the guys you mentioned. It's going to be these guys that maybe Bill Zito's brought in. So that's why we love Stanley Cup finals, and we just hope it at least goes 6 and maybe goes to a 7 like it did last year.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, like a lot of the storylines in the first couple rounds was the Oilers' depth carrying them. Even though now you look at the point totals, and Connor McDavid's first in the NHL in playoff points, Leon Draisaitl second in the NHL in playoff points. So it's still the big horses putting up those points, but even guys like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's had a really strong playoffs, he's third on the Oilers in points, right above Evan Bouchard, who has usually been the top three behind McDavid and Draisaitl. So Nugent's had a really good playoff. I look for him to be a big piece in this series. But then to your point too on those depth guys, right? A lot of the Panthers' best depth guys are guys they acquired at the trade deadline. So the Seth Jones and the Brad Marchand. Marchand's leading the Panthers in even strength points in the playoffs this year. So he's obviously having a really strong playoff. But for the Oilers, it wasn't necessarily the trade deadline acquisitions, although Wallman and Frederick were strong acquisitions. It's the guys that got back from injury. It's the Evander Kanes. It's the Matthias Ekholms. It's those guys who are being able to kind of shape their lineup a little bit and make that difference that I think could play a huge factor in this series. And they aren't necessarily the guys that they rode with in the regular season, but they're really strong players that they got in the playoffs and they need. And the loss of Zach Hyman, that's not going to be understated. Like that's going to play maybe a big factor in this series. So I saw today too, it was like torn ligaments. Like he really messed up his wrist to the point where at first they were like, maybe he'll come back in the Stanley Cup final. And now it's like, will he even be ready for training camp in September?
Yeah, I think he knew right away when he kind of dropped his stick and went down the tunnel. He's like, something's really wrong here. And if you're an Oilers fan, you hope he's ready, but you'd still like to see him lifting that Stanley Cup with all the torn ligaments and the broken wrist, because he'd obviously be doing it kind of like Nazem Kadri did when he had, I think it was a wrist or a hand injury when Colorado won the Cup. So the Hyman thing's going to be big. Like if the Oilers end up losing 2 years in a row, I think a lot of us are going to be talking about, especially Oilers fans, like would this series have been different if Zach Hyman had been in the lineup? Maybe, but we'll never know because Hyman's not going to play. And as you say, the players that are coming back from injury, it's huge. I think Matthias Ekholm is probably the biggest one for me. We don't even know if he's at 100%, Keith. My guess is that Ekholm's probably not even at like 90%, but he's still playing great hockey back there. He's arguably their best all-around defenseman, and he's going to play a big part if the Oilers do want to get this deep and maybe win a Stanley Cup. So we'll see how far this series goes. We hope it's not a 3-0 series lead like we had last year, even though we still got a series out of it and went 7, but just excited to get things going tonight.
100%. And like one other key I was listening to that I thought was an interesting point. So this year, the Edmonton Oilers have home ice as opposed to the Florida Panthers. So the Oilers are going to have one less long travel day, which could play a factor, right? So these Edmonton and Florida is about as far as you could possibly travel. You got Northwest Canada versus Southeast United States. I know the media made a big stink out of it last year. They were complaining they got to travel, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Don't really care. I think the players is the bigger concern there. But to that point, it's like maybe that benefits the Oilers significantly. Like they got to stay at home for a while. And I know the Panthers too, they're really into the sports science. They really are focused on rest and recovery. Like that's a big emphasis of their team. And so they end up traveling Tuesday morning, which a lot of teams would have probably gone, Sunday or Monday to get there. But these guys just kind of travel almost at the last moment. So I'm interested to see if that plays a factor into this series. The rest and recovery is huge, and these long travel days could be, it's like a 6-hour flight? I don't even know.
It's a very long flight, but the rest is huge for both teams, right? Like everyone's battling something at this point. We even think Connor McDavid might even be battling something, even though he scored that spectacular goal against the Dallas Stars that kind of helped them oust Dallas. But the Florida Panthers will be just fine. I love that they waited till Tuesday to travel because it just gives you more time sleeping in your own bed. You're with your family. You're kind of getting ready for the Cup final. I know a lot of these players wanted it to start a little earlier, but for them, that's great. For the Oilers, it's been great just kind of being at home in Edmonton and waiting for this. But it's going to be interesting to see who comes out quickly. Like, is it going to be the Oilers with the home ice advantage? As you say, they didn't have that last year in game 1 or 2. Obviously not in game 7 either. But like, can they come out and get that crowd going in Edmonton? That would be huge, and maybe they can go up 1-0 this year compared to last year.
Yeah, and I think a big thing people aren't talking about too is Leon Draisaitl's health. Like he was clearly injured last year. Like he could not shoot a puck, like barely hold his stick. Like, and this year he's pretty healthy. He's humming along in the playoffs. So I think that that's going to be a big factor for the Oilers too. And the second best offensive player on the planet, arguably, is at full, like not full health, because everyone's, like you said, is battling something at this point, but it's not to the point where it's bringing him down this year. I think that's going to be a big key. He was really quiet in the Stanley Cup Final last year, and a lot of that was not due to his talent or his skill set or how he played, but mostly due to injury. So I think that's going to be a big key. And then I'm looking at the ratings too. I'm curious how the ratings are going to be this year. So especially in the U.S., it's on TNT this year instead of ESPN, so that usually brings it down a tad bit. We do get a rematch, so I think that's an interesting aspect of it. It's not one of the bigger markets, so it's not in New York or a Chicago or a Boston even. So to me, I'm looking at the ratings are going to be interesting. I was hanging out with my good personal close friend Gary Bettman yesterday, and he touched on the point that a lot of the sports reporters are reporting on how the U.S. ratings are, and really hockey is, it's a two nation sport. It should be posted on North American ratings because 7 of the 32 NHL teams do play up in Canada, as opposed to the NFL that has 0, and MLB and NBA both just have the Toronto team in their sports. So the NHL is actually up year over year in the North American ratings. They had 5 Canada teams make the playoffs this year. So I think we have to look at the ratings from a full picture on how it does in both Sportsnet and in Canada, but also how the U.S. does. TNT, hopefully they get their numbers to a place where they're happy with. I know last year's hard to compare because it was ESPN, it was Game 7, it was electric. So we'll see what happens with that.
Well, just to get Kenny Albert on the call as well, I'm excited to hear Kenny Albert. We can get both up here in Canada, Sportsnet, and if you have the ways, you can get the NHL on TNT. So pumped to hear a little Kenny Albert. Eddie Olchuk's on the broadcast. I love the NHL on TNT panel like you and a lot of other people do. So, yeah, the ratings definitely will be interesting with the rematch of last year's final, but I don't think I'm worried whatsoever. Us true hockey fans will be watching, but maybe a lot of the hockey fans that are kind of on the brink after the Four Nations face-off are like, all right, the Cup final starting. They tune in on Monday, and it's not starting yet. So maybe a couple of those people aren't ready for this Cup final to start on a Wednesday, but we certainly are.
Those are the fans they need, though, and like to that point, like the NBA starts on Thursday, so it's kind of like similar. Like they're not. I wouldn't say it's crazy that they didn't start on Monday. But also, Seth, can we get the Conn Smythe odds up from our friends at CoolBet? I want to take a look at these here real quick. So we're looking at who's going to be the MVP of the Stanley Cup Final. Connor McDavid, to no one's surprise, is the favorite, getting even odds plus 100. You have a few other guys on this list: Bobrovsky plus 250, Barkov plus 425. Leon Draisaitl feels like a decent value at plus 650. And then you got Tkachuk and Skinner, the next closest at plus 2,500. I'll even throw you a different one. I look at Brad Marchand. I think he was around plus 4,000. Same with Sam Bennett. Those are a couple guys. If the Florida Panthers are going to go back-to-back this year, I look for them to have big playoffs. Matthew Tkachuk, no offense to him, he plays a great game, but he hasn't been scoring at the rate that he generally does. He's clearly battling something. He missed a big chunk of the season after Four Nations, so I don't think he's going to be the guy to put up these big numbers in the playoffs, whether he plays well or not. I don't think it's going to be the box score stats that define him. So to me, one of the goalies could be interesting if they really stand on their head and it's like a 4-0, 4-1 series. But to me, I'm looking at a couple of the more depth kind of guys for the Panthers. And then for the Oilers, I think Leon at plus 650 also has some good value. He's a guy that can really stuff the stat sheet. And if McDavid and him are kind of close, they'll probably give it to McDavid. But if he significantly outplays Connor in terms of points in this playoff, in this series, I think it goes to Leon, no doubt, if the Oilers are the ones hoisting the cup at the end.
Yeah, it depends which guy outplays the other for sure. So maybe Draisaitl at plus 650 could be that guy. To your points about Tkachuk, he would have to have the series of his life. He would have to carry the Florida Panthers on his back to his second straight cup if he wanted to win Conn Smythe. Because as you say, he's been battling something. He hasn't really been himself. So I don't even think I would touch Tkachuk. Plus 4,000 though for Brad Marchand. If that's the number, I think that's a great number. A lot of people
I just double checked. It's actually plus 5,000.
So even better. I think a lot of people might be hammering Brad Marchand because he could be a difference maker, which he has been through 3 rounds so far. So if Florida wins, Marchand's definitely an option. Sergei Bobrovsky, I think, is my main option if the Panthers do win. But if it's Edmonton, we know McDavid got it in their loss last year when they lost to this Panthers team. Like McDavid would for sure get it again. It would be 2 in a row if he does bring a cup to Edmonton. And I think that would be pretty easy money. I know it's only plus 100, but a lot of people would have McDavid on their betting cards.
Tyler, are we in the trust tree? Can I ask you a dumb question?
Let's hear it.
Is the Conn Smythe the MVP of the Stanley Cup Final or the MVP of the playoffs?
It's supposed to be of the playoffs, but the sample size over a 4 to 7 game series, I feel like sways a lot of people at some points.
Because, like, are voters looking at total playoff point totals and, like, stats like that, or are they really hyper-focused on just this series alone? Can someone who hasn't had a good, like, point-wise, if they have a really good final, can they still win it? Like, I know, like, it's like there's never – are you ever going to see a situation where someone wins the Conn Smythe where their team wasn't in the Cup Final?
No, I don't think you can. I think it would have to be one of the teams in the Cup Final, if memory serves. But a lot of it is just recency bias, right? Like we're all focused in on this final series of this gigantic tournament for the best trophy in all of sports. And let's just say it goes 6 or 7 games. Like these are the 6 or 7 games that are freshest in our memory. So I think that's why recency bias plays a lot into the Conn Smythe votes from a lot of the media, but it is a accumulation of what they've done throughout the entire postseason run. So McDavid's been that guy. I think you said earlier, he leads the playoffs in points, if I'm not mistaken. Him and Draisaitl are up there 1-2. So it would almost have to go to McDavid, as you say, unless Draisaitl just blows him out of the water during the Stanley Cup Final.
Not only does Connor lead in points, so he has 26 points, Leon's second with 25 points. They're both pretty close, but even strength points, Connor is 22. So 22 of his 26 points are even strength, which kind of surprised me. Not to say McDavid's a power play merchant, but he does get significant power play time. The Oilers are typically one of the best power play units in the league, so he's getting a lot of points that way. But to me, most of his points have been even strength, which is even more impressive that he's built such a big lead on that.
Do you have your pick, by the way?
For Conn Smythe or for the Cup?
For the Cup. Well, I think we should do it before a little puck doku.
Yeah. See, my dilemma is I'm picking the Oilers. Like that's not up for debate. I am picking the Oilers. Am I confident in Stuart Skinner in the net? Not really, but I'm confident in McDavid and Draisaitl being there last year, knowing what it was like to lose and not letting that happen again this year. Taking advantage of, Hyman's out for the Oilers, but Tkachuk's banged up for the Panthers. So I think that might be a wash. And to me, like the Oilers, Paul Maurice said it best. Both these teams fixed not their weakness necessarily, but their deficiency. So the Oilers last year, like strong offense, not as great defense. They got a couple guys that they could really move the puck out of the zone that they lacked. And I think that has gone a long way this year to help them. The Panthers got better offensively a little bit, adding Jones and Marchand at the deadline. They were really strong defensively. But to me, I look for the Oilers. I want to take them in 6. I don't know if they win in Florida, though. And I don't know if I want to go like 7. Oilers in 7 seems like the chalky pick. Fuck it. I'm going to go Oilers in 7. I think it makes sense to me. They're going to be home this time. So I think that's going to help in game 7. They are one of the best home ice teams in the playoffs over the last few years and also in the regular season this year. So to me, the home ice advantage is going to be a big factor. I got Oilers in 7. Connor McDavid finally does it. Give my best friend, Gary Bettman, giving him the cup at the end of that series.
Hey, happy belated. It was his birthday on Monday, Gary Bettman. So happy belated to the commissioner.
Should have said something to him yesterday.
You should have gave him a little happy birthday. But I hope your prediction comes true. I have Oilers in 6, which would mean they get the job done down in Florida, like the cup was handed out last year. I've picked against the Oilers in every round, Keith. Every single round. I'm switching it up now. I'm finally picking the Edmonton Oilers. Most people, I feel like, are kind of split right now. People want to pick Florida because they're such a dominant team, but a lot of people just think after McDavid lost last year, there's really no way he could lose 2 years in a row. So that's kind of the train of thought I'm going with, and I think the Oilers get it done in 6 games.
I wouldn't be surprised whoever wins, put it that way. Like I could easily see both these teams winning. They're both really strong. If we're looking at our cool bet odds too, cool bet only has the Oilers as a slight favorite on the series to lift the cup, -123. The Florida Panthers are +105. So pretty much like a 52 to 48% kind of difference there. So not really much. Pretty solid coin flip. So we'll see what happens. We got game 1 tonight, 8 p.m. Let's finish up the episode with our Puck Doku boards. If you've been with us for the long time, you know we like to finish the episodes with our Puck Dokus. This was a tough one today, boys. My worst uniqueness to date. The one day we didn't have the episode, I did end up kind of winning, though. Not a big deal or anything. Not going to say, whatever. It is what it is. The Hall of Fame category is what I think kind of drove a little toughness, especially with the Ottawa Senators and the Colorado Avalanche being relatively new teams comparatively to the rest of the NHL. So I'm surprised. I was going to go Marian Hossa. I see that Tyler did there. I thought he was going to be higher. I'm surprised he wasn't as high. I didn't look. I don't know who was the highest in that for the Ottawa Senators, but probably Alfredson. But to me, I thought that was going to be a high percentage. I really liked a couple of the picks here. I liked Jerome McGinley Avalanche Hall of Fame was really good by Seth there. I was kind of thinking that, but I was like, I thought people might. It's the easy pick sometimes. Like he played, I think, like a season there, so maybe some people remember that. I personally, I think I got one. I got one under 1% today. It was Chris Simon with the Rangers Avalanche. Tyler had a black and white pick, which I thought was crazy. I don't even know who that is. What's his name?
That's Babe Dye.
Yeah, that's an insane pick, insane pull there. And Seth, obviously, with the Rangers category, I mean, forget about it.
Yeah, Seth was impressive today, but I will say I did get him. And yes, I will back you up. In one of the days we have not done the show, we've continued to do this in our group chat, and you did win one of the days, but unfortunately, it's not one of the ones that counts to the leaderboard. So I did get Seth today. Yeah, Babe Dye. I think my advantage there is living in Toronto and going to games at the Air Canada Centre, now Scotiabank Arena, even Maple Leaf Gardens, and a lot of Maple Leafs from back in the day, since their original 6 team were inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's just why I knew that name. I know Seth liked my Ryan Holwig pick for Maple Leafs Rangers. I think that was his favorite Ranger of all time, other than Chris Newbury, who he did pick. And you picked one of my favorite players of all time in that slot in Dominic Moore. Also, another one of my favorites, Alexei Kovalev. I was a huge Kovalev fan. Remember the goalie?
I couldn't believe he got 4% there. Like, I didn't think that many people remember he played in Ottawa.
Yeah, no, same. That was a very low percentage for sure. Remember the helmetless goal that he scored? It was circulating on X the other day. So gotta love Alexei Kovalev. I liked my Yari Curry pick. I was like, all right, like pretty sure he finished in Colorado. So Not a lot of people would pick
Yeah, that
him
was crazy.
for the
I would have not
Avalanche.
have remembered that.
Yeah, for the Avalanche Hall of Fame one. Calvin DeHaan made some headlines near the end of the season for Seth's New York Rangers, so I had to go with him. And for some reason, the first player that came to my mind today with this was Troy Bodie, former Maple Leaf, former Anaheim Duck. I honestly didn't even think of another former Leaf Duck, and Troy Bodie was the only one that stood in my mind.
I actually know Troy Bodie, so that's funny.
That is crazy, but I love your Stumpy Thomas pick. I love the Sam Carrick pick on Seth's board, and I did get him by 2 today. So we'll have the leaderboard back in our other one, but I'm slowly but surely inching my way up to Seth right now.
I'm pretty sure Troy runs the Kraken's AHL operation down there. Last time I talked to him a few years ago.
Nice.
Good guy, really good guy. To your point too, Calvin DeHaan only being 0.9% when that trade literally happened this year. Because how I envision these is I think of a couple right away, like Calvin DeHaan, Ryan Lindgren were just from that trade alone, UC Parsonen. And I was like, I'm not picking any of those guys because they'll have high percentage recency bias. So I'm surprised it was that low.
He barely played. He was a healthy scratch.
Yeah, I think he got 2, maybe 3 games in there. But what a guy, funny guy. But cool. That's all the time we have for you today. 8 p.m. Eastern time for Puck Drop, a Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. We'll be back here on Friday previewing Game 2, recapping Game 1. Get your picks in with CoolBet. Go to puckpedia.com/CoolBet to get in on the action tonight. Everyone have a good night.